You are listening to the Built to Grow podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Built to Grow podcast. I'm your host, Tim Lyons, in studio, sunny Scottsdale, joined as always by Randy Angston. How are you, buddy?
I'm great. How are you today?
Good. Special episode. We got a special guest today, Max Wagner, coming from WCI Commercial. I don't know if you guys remember me speaking about this a couple episodes or maybe even last episode.
Sure.
I said, you know what? We need to get a business broker on here because I want to know from the horse's mouth, what are buyers looking for? Okay. So we speak to gym owners every day. And one of the biggest things is you get into this business because you like training, you like working. I mean, I don't know many people that get in the business thinking long term, like long enough term to say, okay, this is an asset. I'm building it and growing this to eventually sell.
Yeah.
I think that hits people around 5 or 6 years. They're starting to feel the burn a little bit. The business is either taking off or going the opposite way. And they're like, wait, is this thing even worth anything at this point? And I think that's really the wrong way to look at it. What we're building here as business owners is a true asset. That's an asset. It should be. And so we wanted to bring Max in. Welcome, Max. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great.
Good.
Thank you.
Glad you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And we wanted to hear from you, like, what are buyers looking for? Okay. So here we are. Let me set the stage. We've got a gym owner in Wisconsin. They're in their business every single day. They're growing it. They've got a nice little team, but they're involved in pretty much everything in the business. And they come to you, even though I'm not sure that you represent Wisconsin. Maybe you do.
I can.
You can.
Yes.
Okay. So they come to you, Max. Hey, listen, I want to sell my business. I'm burnt out. I want to change industries, or I want to do something else. And then you say, great. What do they need to have ready to go? Like, what are the things that they should be working on?
Okay.
I know it's a giant question.
As far as the seller's concerned.
Yeah. So what are the sellers? No, I'm saying what are the buyers looking for? So the seller needs to work on those things to get it ready for the buyer.
Exactly. A buyer is looking for a business that is consistent, that has been around for a while, that has good financials, that has someone that is not in the day-to-day where they need to come into that position and take over, because buyers get nervous about that. How can I replace this person that is, the face of the company and has all the, all of the relationships, that type of thing. Okay,
so you're saying a buyer would come in and say, okay, how are you running your operation? Is that owner so involved as you said, the face of the organization, that's a turnoff to a buyer, would you say?
It can be. It can be scary.
It can be scary. Okay.
Is it just based upon like the depth and like the level of work and responsibility that goes along with it, as opposed to just being like, the representation of? Is it the fact that they don't feel like they have the skill set to step in or the desire to step in and do the day-to-day operations for most buyers?
I don't think that's it. I think the buyer wants to know that they're going to be able to be successful and continue in the same way that the current owner is being successful.
Okay.
Does that
That's a great point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whether or not they want to be involved in the business or not, they don't want that owner to be removed and the whole thing falls apart.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that goes to what we've been speaking about, Randy, is that's that cash flow quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. You hear us talking about it all the time, going from self-employed, meaning you own your job, to business owner, which is the business runs on systems with or without you involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the biggest probably shift to get it to become sellable.
Exactly.
Would you say?
Exactly.
Okay. So that's the shift to get it to become sellable, but your books might not be in order.
Correct.
And so that might be a problem. So
Correct.
What are they looking for as far as books go? They want...
Okay. If I can just kind of turn this around on the other side, and that will help sellers to understand what the buyers are looking for by what they do or what they don't do.
Perfect.
Okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So first and foremost, I start out with telling every seller Run your business like you are putting it up for sale tomorrow.
I like this.
Okay.
Okay?
We're already
All right.
onto something.
Okay?
We got something going.
I'm going to say that again because this is probably one of the most important things I tell sellers. Run your business like you are going to put it up for sale tomorrow. You can equate it to a home, okay? If you're going to sell a home, then you need to fix it up and make it look beautiful and fix everything up, and so you will be able to get top dollar when you list the house.
Perfect. Great analogy.
Same thing with a business.
It has to happen before
Okay.
you list it, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So that means getting your financials in order. That means having really good books and records. The golden ticket is the tax returns,
Okay.
okay? Not personal. Nobody cares about your personal tax returns. It's the business tax returns, whether it's an 1120S, whether it's a Schedule C, however the business is set up. That's what the golden ticket is, and that's what will set the price and drive the train.
Okay. So I was telling you before this, there's a lot of things that we do on tax returns to make sure our burden in our taxable income is as low as possible.
Right.
That ends up hurting us when it comes to
Exactly.
valuation of the company.
Exactly.
Can't
The
win,
the
guys.
diligence or looking for money or yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
so that's a fine line. So how many years back are they looking? Because if you fix it this year, does that even matter? Does it have to be some history of several years?
Ideally, for a perfect situation, and you and I talked about this, the banks, the buyers, the appraisers, and the brokers, they are all looking for the last 3 years of tax returns and year to date.
Okay.
Okay?
So it's like a catch-22.
It
This
is.
such
Yeah.
a
It is.
catch-22.
It is.
So if you're looking to sell your business, you may end up paying a little bit more in taxes every year to
Yes.
get it looking better for a
Yes.
better valuation.
Yes.
We're going to talk about valuation in a second because that is a murky.
It's a muddy water.
And it sounds like it's all over the board. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But okay, gyms. This is probably one of the worst times in the history of gyms to even put your gym up for sale. So it's not something that even matters right now because buyers are not really. Well, you would answer this. Are buyers looking to buy gyms right now?
Not to my knowledge.
I mean, maybe for a steal.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'll get
Yeah.
into that for a steal. I'll come in. No, not even that.
I don't deal with fire sales.
Okay.
I'm going to sell a business that is appraised and that, you give good value.
Okay.
Yeah.
She doesn't deal with fire sales.
That makes sense. I mean, like that, it is a different situation, right? The buyer in that is probably looking to offload something and save, whatever they can.
Yeah, true.
But that situation, from the relationship between the buyer and seller in that situation, is probably they expect there to be fires. You know what I mean? It's not the traditional like, hey, I'm not stepping into a business that I know is successful, profitable. I'm not looking to step in and continue the trend.
Exactly.
I know that I can provide something, turn it around, and save my ass, or it's
True.
and then profit in the end.
There's challenges with that.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, and high risks.
So let's look at let me ask you a couple things. How hard do buyers look at, say, your marketing systems, your lead flow per month, your sales conversion percentages, your billing software? Like, what are they
Okay.
looking at there?
Okay, so what happens during the sales process, and again, this is going to differ from buyer to buyer, business to business. Just depends upon what the individual is looking for. But more often than not, what happens is once you both enter into a fully executed purchase agreement, then due diligence comes into play. And that gives that buyer every opportunity to look at every piece of the business. Okay, and decide whether it's good, ask questions, really get into depth into that.
Great. So, okay, the value comes from the tax returns.
Correct.
We agree on some type of price, and we're going to talk about valuation.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a due diligence period where they probably interview the owner and walk through everything. Take me through your systems internally.
Right. They'll ask for paperwork. Usually they'll have, their own CPA that helps them go through the books and records. They'll have maybe, somebody representing them legally. And then, they go through everything and just figure out how the business is run and what's important to them.
Well, I mean, I'd imagine if I was buying a plumbing business, I'd want to know how many leads is this plumbing business getting every single month. I think that would be pretty important, right? So they do look at that.
They'll ask whatever questions
Okay.
is important to
And
them.
then if I'm, and I'm just equating this again to the plumbing business, I'd want to know, like, how are you billing these people? How are you keeping your inventory? What does that database look like? They're looking at all this stuff too.
They are
That
looking at
doesn't
everything.
change the valuation. That just
Correct.
pushes them towards a sale or away from a sale.
Correct.
Signing on the dotted line.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now,
Correct.
going through, here's a good question, though, to kind of follow that up. Now, in the event that, let's say, they are having that conversation, they're going through doing their due diligence, and they come across a lack of systems or a lack of understanding, or something doesn't add up. Is that where you go back to the drawing board with the offer or with the value?
It can. Sometimes it's just a matter of clarity
Okay.
and maybe digging in a little more, asking more questions, getting more information so there's no misunderstanding.
I could also see it the other way. Buyers coming in, the numbers look great on paper, the value's there. They get into the weeds and like, wow, they're not even running a good business internally. That's even
Absolutely.
better for me coming in. I can fix this, and this will be even better business. I mean, you could see it that way too, right?
It can possibly be, but if they're, from my experience, if they're not really comfortable with how everything is being run and that it's a well-oiled machine, sometimes they will step away from
Okay.
the business.
So on average, general, of all the purchase agreements that have been created, and then the due diligence periods happens where they're diving into the systems, like how many of those actually close? What percentage?
Honestly,
Yeah.
from my experience, and I think the industry standard is somewhere around 25 to 30%.
So
Wow.
70% bounce once they get in the weeds. That's good to know.
Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean once they get into the weeds. There have been situations where I have a scared seller, he's been burnt. I have a scared buyer, he's been burnt, and they just cannot get on the same page even before the fully executed purchase agreement.
it.
So it's all over the board. It doesn't necessarily mean that they all fall out in due diligence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's pretty low. 25% only close. 30%. So 75 to 80. Whatever that math is. 70 to 75% do not close.
Now understand, I'm talking about the full scope of everything, of a buyer that's looking at a business that maybe gets to an LOI, doesn't get to a purchase agreement. I'm talking about all over the
Got it.
board. People that I spend time with, buyers that I spend time with, sellers that I spend time with. The ratio of actually closing them is usually around that percentage.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay. So here you are. You got gym owners thinking, wow, okay, I wonder what my business is worth. We're going to hit that. That's
Yeah.
a big topic here. Wonder what my
The muddy
business-
waters.
Guys, I went through this with her before this. And I'm
You were
gonna-
dizzy, right?
Well, it's all general. I mean, there's so many different things that it could be, and so it's really hard to understand. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about it in a second.
Yeah.
You got a gym owner that's listening to this podcast. Okay, oh my gosh, I feel like I got a good business. Again, talking about valuation in a second. They're nervous now. They're nervous. Like, I couldn't even sell this thing because I'm so involved in this. If a buyer comes in and I'm leaving, they're not going to want it. My systems internally, I've got everything written down on Google Sheets and Excel files, and nothing's in automation. Nothing's a system. Is that even a sellable business, in your opinion?
Hard to say. It just depends upon what the bottom line shows.
So regardless of the chaos within the business, the owner being involved, if the tax returns are great, it's sellable.
Yes.
Interesting. So
Yes.
that goes against what we're talking
Yes.
about. It
Well,
goes-
I mean,
Yes.
at the end of the day, because I think in the full spectrum of, it's still a relationship, like you were talking about. I mean, like what the buyer is looking for versus, if they're looking to step into a solid business with great numbers and ease of transitioning and taking ownership of that, that's one buyer. our buddies that we were talking, Casey and Jerry, like they are in that position to be looking for the fire sales right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So those two individuals aren't necessarily looking for the same business.
Exactly.
And so that's, I think,
Exactly.
where it's really, it's like buying a house. Are you buying it to flip, or are you buying the
Right.
house you want to move into
Right.
for the rest of your life?
Great
Like,
analogies.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
So
depends upon the buyer. And some buyers, it doesn't matter if you are the face of the company.
Okay.
Now, I'm just painting the picture of a perfect scenario, if you will,
A perfect scenario
for most buyers.
is what? Paint it.
Is somebody that is in the background, somebody that has systems in place, somebody that has longevity, somebody that is not over the top with equipment. In other words, equipment heavy. Somebody that has history and has brought in goodwill. I mean, there's so many components to
That's
what
the
would
perfect scenario. So they've got all that stuff in place. That makes
Exactly.
that makes a purchase really a lot easier.
Exactly.
Back to
Now-
creating the business, like you said, running the business like you're trying to sell it tomorrow or today.
Right.
That's the business you should be aspiring to have every day you show up.
Exactly. Exactly. And if you know that by stepping back, it's going to attract most buyers, then that's going to give you the best opportunity to sell it.
Perfect.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now
Okay.
there's other factors also. There's businesses, you don't want a business that has 25% of their clients in one area. And if coming from one, feeding.
Lead source?
Exactly.
You don't want that.
Well, I don't think it's as indicative in gyms as it
Well,
can
are you
be
saying
in other.
that it's important to have multiple poles in the water getting marketing for you? Is that what-
Yes, absolutely.
Look at
And-
that.
Look at that.
And
Diversification over
right,
here.
diversification, diversification. So, example: if I have a septic company that has one client that gives them 40% of their business, then if that client steps away for some reason, then there's a problem on the cash flow,
Very important.
or there can be a problem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's contract. I mean, like, the contracts with the service-based
Right.
business. I can
If,
totally understand
if
that. Sure.
you get all of your leads from Facebook and Facebook disappears and now you have 0 leads, that's a problem.
it can be. It doesn't mean you're going to lose the existing business. You're talking about future
New
leads.
business. Sure. Yeah,
Right.
new
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, I would say that's not really an issue as much as if there's something out there that is that may cause you to lose at least 15 or 20% of your current revenue, then you've got a problem.
Oh, I see what you're saying. One of your clients is bringing in, okay, like, yeah, in a
But I
septic
was
business.
just saying, like,
Not
it's
your
probably
lead
not
source.
indicative. Right,
You're
exactly.
talking about your customers.
Right.
And
Sure.
for the
And-
gym level.
and I
yeah.
don't think that's a real issue
Well,
unless I'm unaware of that.
Maybe you got an agreement with a major corporation that's driving in 50% of your revenue.
Or
There you
here,
go.
what if you run an independent training model and your independent trainer is the one that's providing 40% of your income for your business?
There you go.
Right there. Your customer is your trainer. It's not your trainer's clients, because they're responsible for that percentage of your income each month.
That's a great point, Randy.
You just want to be really careful to just not put all your eggs in one basket, or
Very
two, or
smart.
3, or 4. Diversify.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. The elephant in the room. Elephant in the room is what, here I am running a business, not me, but like gyms out there, they've been hard at it 5, 6, 8, 10, 23 years.
Yeah, there's
And
a lot
they,
of them
and they
out there.
sit back and look at what they've built.
Mm-hmm.
How do they figure out what it's worth?
Okay, that's a great question. First of all, let me just start by saying a lot of owners don't really understand that because they've been in business for so long, that adds value. That does not add value. What adds value is the last 3 years and the year to date
Of tax returns.
of tax returns, and your year to date P&L, whatever you're doing, as long as the revenues are continuing along the same trend as the last 3 years. So the idea of the fact that they had the business for 23 years and they've been doing great, there was a time that they did wonderful, has nothing to do with their value today.
Okay, it's in the last 3 years.
It's in the last 3 years.
And tax returns are going to show your gross revenue.
Correct.
It's going to show your net profit.
Correct.
And your taxable income, what you owe. What else? Okay, so that's great. That sheet you showed me looked like a few more things were included.
Yeah, they can be.
So
Yeah,
that's tax
the cash
returns.
flow.
Some of this is P&L stuff, right?
Right. P&Ls will, P&Ls serve as a really good understanding of the details as to how a business got from the P&L to the tax return.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. The tax return doesn't really give you all of those details. So buyers like to see the P&L so they understand how this went from the P&L to the tax return.
Okay. So look at
Much
that.
deeper understanding, if that makes sense.
So we're looking at the historical numbers for the last 3 years, maybe 3 years plus year to date.
Okay.
And you're looking for what number? What's that bottom line number that you're looking at?
A bottom line number is what the new buyer can expect to put in their pocket at the end of the day.
And what's that called?
That's called the cash flow, the owner's cash flow.
And that's a total of the 3 years?
That's a total each financial document is given a separate cash flow.
Okay.
And each document is separated out based on the financials, and then each cash flow for each time frame or each year.
Yeah. Okay.
Each year in
has
this
its own number at the
has
bottom.
its own number at the
and
bottom.
do we add those numbers up?
That depends. As we talked about before, so I might have 3 years of tax returns and then this year of the owner's cash flow. Maybe in 2017, the business was terrible. So because it's so far back so far back, I might drop that and I might only add 18, 19, and this year to date.
Okay.
Okay. The weight of the appraisal, the weight of somebody that's trying to get a bank loan is going to be put on the most recent time, which is the year, the prior, at this point, 2019 tax return and year to date P&L.
Okay. So we got this number, which is arbitrary, but it's a cash flow of the last 3 years as a total. Or an average.
I'll average it out, but again, depending upon what each cash flow sheet shows me.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at, and this is why this was as clear as mud.
I know. I'm sorry. I wish it was clear. It's very lucrative.
Let's just say 2017 was 100,000. 2018 was 100,000.
Okay.
2019 was 150,000.
Okay.
And that's it. Okay, let's just say we're selling it January of 2020 this year. Okay, and we're just looked at the last 3 years just to make it easy.
Okay.
The total of those three numbers is 350,000 in cash flow.
Correct.
Are we taking that $350,000 in cash flow and doing a multiple on that, or are we taking an average of the 3 years and doing a multiple on the average?
Okay. First of all, before I would do that, I would look at the year-to-date P&L to make sure where you're at on that.
Let's just say we're January of 2020, so we just did the last 3 years.
Okay. All right. So with that said, me as the business broker, I'm going to look at those three numbers. I might average them out.
Okay.
I might look at the last 2 years, whatever I can put together to give the business owner the highest value.
Okay.
So there's not
from
a
the
hard
3 years.
I guess industry doesn't give you necessarily. There's not a hard formula for like this is the.
The obvious
staple.
The obvious
standard
answer
formula.
would be add them all three together. That would give you the most value versus an average.
In this situation, it probably would because 100,000, 100,000, 150,000.
That's 350.
350.
Right,
Sure.
350, right, times 3 equals. So, yeah, I would probably
Okay.
do that.
So you hear about multiples on net profit. You hear multiples on gross revenue if you're looking at the tech space. In gyms, local brick and mortar gyms, what is the multiple that you would get on that cash flow number?
You're asking what I might list it for? Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, what would
Okay.
you list it for?
Again, without seeing the year-to-date, that might change that.
The year-to-date is January of 2020, so there is no year-to-date.
Okay. So based on this, I would maybe, and again, I'm ballparking it, I might list it at 950. Close to 1,000.
3?
Close to $1 million, I'm sorry. Usually around 3, a little bit under. And remember, we talked about whether it's 100,000 or less. A lot of times that's not enough to support the debt service. So since the most recent one was higher than that, I might just go a little bit under that.
Okay, so it's very clear that it's a very case by case.
Definitely. Okay. Case by case. Not only that, it's Tim, it has to do with the bank, what type of loans the banks, are looking for, what type of loans that the banks will give, the underwriter, the appraiser, the type of industry, the strength of the seller, the strength of the buyer. There's a lot that goes into it.
You've mentioned debt service quite a few times, and we're talking debt service of the buyer, getting a loan.
Correct.
Getting this, showing that cash flow.
Correct.
Do I have enough cash flow to service this debt and kind of run the operations?
Correct.
So that's why that's important.
That's why that's very important.
But if there's somebody that came in and wrote a check for $900,000, that doesn't mean anything. We don't have a debt service. They're just coming as a cash buyer.
Correct.
But you mentioned in 10 years you've never seen anybody come to the table without some type of financing.
Exactly. Something. Some skin in the game, whether the seller's going to carry 10% or 5% or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you guys are hearing this about $100,000 in cash flow a year on average, using a 3x multiple, just under, somewhere around 8 to 900,000.
I usually like to see it more than 100. Because that's usually the breaking point.
Yeah,
so,
you mentioned that. So if that was 200,
200, we're good. Right, exactly.
200, 250.
Then it's stronger.
That's a 650 value.
Well, just that right there.
Flow.
I mean, use that piece of advice. If you look at your business and you don't have $100,000 in consistent
cash flow,
right. Cash flow, guys, not
profit,
gross income.
Not gross income.
This is cash flow.
Right.
If your business isn't there, the difficulty or the struggle to sell that business right there from the horse's mouth it's more difficult, right? No, there's no log-based jokes.
Hey, I've been called worse in my life.
Yeah.
Let me just explain what I talked to Tim about before we started. Is that cash flow number? You do want to increase it over 100,000 if you can, because by the time the buyer purchases the business, is that $100,000 going to be enough to support the new buyer to allow them to pay off the SBA loan, and other finances that they're going to need to pay, other bills that they're going to need to have. So if the cash flow is higher, then you're going to get a better valuation on the business.
And so we're defining cash flow and also money in the owner's pocket is technically the same thing, based on the sheet here.
With us, in my experience.
In your experience.
Yes.
So what other things go into cash flow? Like, how do I get that number as high as possible? Just speaking to gym owners.
You're talking about any depreciation, any amortization, any interest, your salary. Make sure that that's clear on a W-2 so that can be added back. If you have meals, travel, donations.
That are for the business or for the personal use of the owner?
For the personal use of the owner.
And you can add that back in. Okay.
Right, correct.
Because that's, again, that's also relevant to the person that's stepping in in those shoes.
Right, so that person that's stepping in can say, well, Tim, his medical insurance was $1,000 a month for him. Well, mine is I don't pay medical insurance because it's through my wife's business, so therefore I'm not going to have to be putting out that $1,000.
$12,000 right into cash flow.
So I can put that right in my pocket.
Got it.
Smart.
And so here we go, another catch-22, where you try to talk about not using the business for personal expenses, but then here's the flip side: it actually helps you in valuation.
To an extent.
I think that's the difference. It doesn't necessarily help you, but it is.
No,
it's
it
considered
increases the cash flow.
It's in consideration.
certain things are very clear to a bank and to an appraiser. Your insurance is clear. Things like meals is clear. Things like travel is clear. But other things that you might want to be doing, your Costco card every year, sending what am I trying to say? Just other things like you're paying for your home office, that type of thing. When it gets really messy and really convoluted and it's not clear, then it makes it very difficult.
What if I took a trip to Disneyland and ran it through the business?
That's perfect. You just have to have documentation on it.
But it's not a business expense.
Right.
So that would go against the expense line in a typical scenario. In this, it's actually added back to the owner cash
Well,
flow.
travel is accepted. Travel is accepted.
Regardless of the business or personal use. If it sits on your P&L as travel and expense, that would add to the cash flow?
Not always. Okay.
Yeah.
Who created this
okay,
formula?
let me explain. That's where my job comes in.
Yeah.
So I see $17,000 last year in travel. And my job as the broker, I have to ask the seller, or I should, some may not, but I do, what exactly is in that $17,000 for travel? Well, 9 of it was for a personal trip. Okay. And what was the rest? The rest was I had to go and conferences, meet business meetings or whatever.
To Medellin.
So I don't add back that whole amount. I add back the 9. Exactly.
Sure.
So a lot of this is before we even list a business.
You got to value it.
My job is I do my own due diligence with the seller. We need to go line by line. I need to understand those P&Ls backwards and forwards, and the clearer those P&Ls are, the easier it is for me because we're going to work together.
Yeah.
I don't represent the buyer; I represent the seller. So that's how it makes it.
You have
easier.
a meeting with the seller, several meetings with the accountant. You get everything together. You create the value. You try to get it as high as possible.
Exactly.
It benefits everybody.
Exactly. A little wiggle room, little wiggle room in that.
Negotiations.
Exactly.
Okay. Very interesting. Not clear at all.
I'm sorry.
3x times cash flow. What other? I mean, this is off topic, but you hear about tech companies,
Yes.
and tech companies do a multiple on gross revenue,
Yeah, it's a whole different animal there.
and it's like 8 to 12. And if I do $100,000 in gross revenue a year, that's $1 million valuation. It's completely opposite of what this is.
There are industries that will command
Giant multiples.
different multiples.
Unbelievable how different that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are with a 3-ish times
3-ish again.
and it's
yeah.
not even against net profit; it's against cash flow. Are all businesses in this kind of category? That I've always thought I'm glad you're here. I've always heard it was on net profit times a multiple.
There's people that use different verbiage to acquire a cash flow, and so you'll hear that. That's the other problem, is it's not consistent in our industry. It's not universal. But I can tell you, our company's been around since 1968. These are what this form is what the banks use.
Okay.
And it's worked, and we've closed over 5,000 businesses, so it's worked.
I got it. Okay, let's get into the gym itself.
Okay.
This is a thing that you hear.
Okay.
There's 2 camps of train of thought, and this goes into whether or not you should have annual agreements in your training gym. Camp 1 is we want to have contracts. It's almost like a subscription, like I was describing to you. The services are haven't been rendered yet, but they've agreed to be there. Let's just say 12 months. The thought on this camp is, well, I can show accounts receivable or at least revenue expected that's in a contract that's got legal signatures and everything else involved, versus the month-to-month gym. The month-to-month gym says you're here, you have a 30-day cancellation at any given time. Start and cancel anytime you want. So no real, nobody's locked into anything. It's just, you can come and go. Everybody next month, they could all disappear over. That's in camp 2. The question that comes up is it going to change either the valuation or the sellability of the business? Not the valuation, because it sounds like valuation is all based on tax returns. We know that. But the sellability of the business, if I come in as a new owner and I see, wow, they've got $400,000 in contracts that go out for the next 12 months versus this one is, let's just say they make the same amount every
dollar
month.
for dollar, just, yeah.
Let's just say they make $20,000 a month each. This one's got, $400,000 in contracts. This one has 0 contracts. What does that do for the seller, like the sellability of the business?
Okay, got it. First of all, you sell businesses on what the numbers are now. You cannot sell a business on a hypothetical number down the road. Okay? I will talk with many sellers. Well, the new buyer can do this and they can do that and they can do this. That's great. But I don't see the numbers on that. What I see is what you've done today.
Yeah.
So whether you do a month, whether you do a year, we talked about there's always a loophole, and a buyer can always cancel on any type of contract if they really, really, truly want to. Regardless of what is written in the contract. I hate to be the bearer of bad news because I deal with a lot of businesses with a lot of really high-level contracts. And at the end of the day, as the buyer or the client, there's always a loophole and there's always a way out of it. So I don't believe, in my experience, that really is going to make a difference.
Okay. So a different situation. This is Jim, so maybe I'll put it into your terms. Maybe you have a service agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
With you're an HVAC company. You have a service agreement with a hotel chain, and you've got it written in your documents that for the next 12 months you're going to go service all these, and you've agreed to a price, and it's not serviced yet, but this is a service agreement. It's almost like a gym membership.
Or product-based business, like having a
we're saying HVAC, HVAC company.
Yeah, and we sell a lot of those.
Right. So if I'm saying, hey, I've got this with Hilton Hotels, and we do all the services in the valley for them, that has no value to the business.
It does in a buyer's mind. I mean, the thought of, yes, I do have a contract.
The sellability goes up.
Sure.
The sellability in his mind, not the value.
No, not the value.
Right.
But the sellability of, when I come into this business, they've got existing clients and existing customers. To me, that's a thumbs up. Versus,
yes.
I don't know, I have to go out and sell new business every month before I can, you know what I mean?
It can be. It depends upon the buyer, though. There's some buyers that know that if they get this great contract that you just described, and they go out in the first couple of weeks, and whoever they send out totally destroys the contract, then it doesn't matter, with bad service or whatever.
Right, but that's like you have to run a good business on top of it.
Exactly.
So if a new buyer comes into a gym and they've got all these contracts, and the trainer goes and punches everybody in the face and they all quit. Yeah,
I'm only saying that because I've had that experience with an HVAC business.
Oh,
yeah.
They punch people in the face.
They do.
Oh man.
No, well, of course. No. As long as they do the thing that they were signed up, you know what I mean. They're not going to go punch everybody in the face and everybody leaves. Of course.
Right.
Of course.
Yeah, but I think the answer to it is almost an opinion. It's an emotional response, not the logic backed by numbers.
Right.
That's walking into a situation saying, okay, cool, I'm comfortable making this decision, regardless of what, staring you in the face. 2 + 2 is 4. That might be logical, but that doesn't mean that the person's still comfortable stepping into that situation. That's where those, the contracts or a service. Product-based business, purchase orders, things like that. That would be that emotional tell, I think, because
I'll put it to you this way: if I'm buying a business, the HVAC company, and one's got a deal with Hilton Hotels for the next 12 months, and the one doesn't, and it doesn't have anything, I'm going to buy the one that has Hilton Hotels. That's a no-brainer.
Oh, it's an attraction. It's an attraction, no question.
That's what I'm going to put that on the table for gym owners, because gym owners are the ones that have an adverse or like an anti-annual contract thing, because in their head they're not going to hold them to it anyway. If they argue with you, you're just going to let them out, or they can disappear at any time. The people that don't do the contracts, they always lean towards month to month because it's easier to sell. They're not locking anybody in. There's it's always goodwill, good like mojo. And to me, if you're looking to sell, I absolutely would want to have annual contracts. Now, does it do anything for the value? No. We've described the valuation of the business comes to the hard numbers of what happened in the past, not potential.
Mm-hmm.
But for the sellability,
I have to agree with you. Yeah, that's going to be more comfortable for a buyer, I believe.
Yeah.
In my experience,
yeah,
that if they're looking at agreements, I guess you call them, as opposed to contracts.
agreements,
Year long as opposed to month to month. Yes.
Yeah. And that's really my point, because the argument is the gym owner can't be that's all month to month. Well, I can put anybody in that seat to sell a month to month because there's no hard overcome.
Yeah.
That's easy. I'm not going to hold them to it anyway, if they argue. But in my side, I'm like, well, you can offer both, but having an agreement does more for you in the sellability aspect than not. So that's just my take.
I agree.
Okay, cool.
I think it goes along with the importance of the systems and like we discussed, like Max brought up early, creating the business that's sellable today, not thinking, I'll get to that down the road, right?
Exactly.
You can't just up and say, okay, 4 years from now I'm going to plan the change, I'm going to sell the business in 4 years. So now I'm going to instill annual contracts so that
there you go.
the seller coming in is going to see this stuff. No, build that business today, because that's the right thing to do. It might not be the easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of that's the friction in our industry is gym owners are looking for the easy sale today, but that doesn't necessarily, it doesn't. We just, discussed it. It's not necessarily going to help you when it comes to the next phase or the next step in your business.
Right. So many times I've been in situations with sellers where they've had a really bad day. They call me up and they say, Max, I'm done. I'm ready to put the keys on the table. I'm done. And then you realize that they have not done anything to set their business up for sale. So what I educate them in is you need to put your buyer's hat on. You need to have at least 3 years where you're gonna look and feel like a buyer, not a seller. And that's why I always say, so you're going to start running your business like you're putting it up for sale tomorrow. And that, at the end of the day, is going to give you the best value.
Okay. That's a general statement. No, I understand what you're saying. Run it like you're going to sell it tomorrow. To me, that means get my books in order, get as much revenue on the books, even if I'm paying more taxes.
Exactly.
That means working myself as the owner out of the day-to-day operations.
Exactly.
That means putting and training my team up and having manuals in place and team training things that you can put anybody in that place.
Systematize.
Right.
Documentation across the board on every position, job descriptions, training, all that.
Exactly.
And having, great documentation on your lead sources and your marketing systems and having an automation in place. Like all that goes into running it like you're selling it tomorrow. Right. So those are the things we preach about. Those are the things that we try to drill home, that most people say, well, if I'm not selling my business, I don't need to do that. I would argue the opposite, because it's going to be a better operation.
I was going to say it's going to be a great well-run business if that's what you're thinking about, and that's what you want to do.
This is great info. I'm not sure it was like really clear, but but it gave people a direction, and that was really what and it sounds like it's just the way it is in this industry.
It's on a case-to-case basis.
You've been doing it 10 years. There's never been a real standardized thing. It's always case by case, like you said. So good to know. I've got your information here. How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn more? Well, hold on. Before you do that, do you help buyers get their businesses ready for sale, even if they don't list with you?
Wait, you mean sellers?
Sorry, sellers. If I came to you, hey, I'm not ready to sell it today, but I'd love to work with you to get it ready so when that time comes, do you have any type of course or coaching or consulting that you do with business owners to get it kind of moving in that direction?
It's really developing relationships with them. I have sellers that I've been talking to for 6, 7, 8 years that all of a sudden they're ready. We talk about an exit strategy, which I think is so important to have in place before you list your business for sale. What are you going to do? What's your future going to look like? Are you going to be able to handle this? And, a lot of psychology goes into this as well. There are many business owners that they are the business that defines them.
Oh, yeah.
And when they sell it, they could, they're a mess. So,
who comes an example is Joe Paterno.
Yeah.
When Joe Paterno for Penn State got, he was a 60-year coach for the football team. And when he got removed because of that scandal, he died within a month.
Yeah,
He died. That was his life.
that
So
happens
to your
a lot,
point, this is somebody's
people
life.
retiring.
So you do a little psychology around it, a little mental coaching, life coaching.
There you go.
I
like it though, because
there is definitely a lot of life coaching that goes on.
when
in
we talk
business
about that, like
brokerage.
when our private clients come to us, I talk to them first week, I go, hey, your business is like, you're in it. I get it. Like, this is your everything, but it's also just an aspect of who you are and what you have, in life.
Right,
so
right.
let's create this as a business, as an entity, as
Right.
part of your situation.
Exactly.
But I always do.
Not what
I always
totally
have to kinda
defines you.
Yeah, because otherwise there is no removal. There is no ability to pull back and consider a sale, or passing it on to somebody else.
Well,
and
not in the present moment for these folks. So the question I ask is, what do you want, gym owners? What do you want to do? Do you want to eventually sell? I would assume yes, versus close.
Yeah, because that's your options.
You could either sell it or give it or close it if you're not going to work there anymore. Because if you get in this business and you've been in there for 35 years, you're not going to be wanting to run a gym when you're 60 years old or whatever it is.
For somebody else, especially.
For somebody else. So those are your options. So back to your question. Do you said you work on relationships. I totally get that. It seems like it's a long sales cycle for you.
It can be.
Do you have anything for these coaching courses? Do you work with them on a consulting basis to work with them to get it ready, like for some type of fee? Like, what do you do?
I haven't.
Why
but
Yeah, like, can we help you there?
that's a good question. It's not really talked about in our industry.
It's time to change that, because
You're
I can tell
probably
you there's
right.
a need.
There is.
There's a need for somebody to come in to get somebody's
There
business
is.
ready for business, regardless if
is.
they list it with you or not.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, if they build a relationship, they're going to list it with you. But if you can get him ready,
Exactly.
and that's $5,000 to do that, that's worth your time. You get, and it's a big value to the gym or to the business owner out there,
Right.
because we're clueless when it comes to this. We really are. That's why I wanted to have you on. We don't
No,
know
I appreciate that.
what
And
the
most
real deal
most
is.
sellers don't. And that's what makes me sad at times, where there's really not a lot of education out there. And
Be that person, Max.
Yeah,
There we go.
They can call me on my cell phone anytime.
All right, your cell phone is, and we'll put in the show notes, 480-213-7055. Ask for Max. Do you do text too? Text.
I text.
You can go to
Tweet.
Max at wcibroker.com,
Yeah, they can email
and then we'll
me.
go to your email and chat with Max. I mean, what else are you going to do, guys? If you're not going to close and you're going to try to sell, you better get your ducks in a row. That was your term earlier.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we talked about a lot of stuff, but there's just so much untalked about, and
Yeah,
the real numbers and stuff. So
Yeah, there's definitely much more we can talk about.
yeah, so get in touch with Max, guys. If you're interested in at least getting prepared, I'm gonna push her to create something to be able to help everybody here.
So I do that all day long. I can value anybody's business all day long. I don't charge for that. And I know he's looking at me.
Tim is so mad right now.
So, I can give a business owner a valuation based on what I see at this point in time. And a lot of times sellers are just curious. They have no earthly idea what their business is worth. So they'll reach out to me and say, can you really value that for me? What is it? And you'd be surprised how many times sellers are shocked. They're like, wow, I didn't think my business was worth anything. Really? I can actually get this for my business? So either they're ready to sell at that point in time when they're excited, or sometimes I will say to them, you're not quite ready. Let's wait another 6 months. Let's wait another year. When they're ready is when the time is going to happen, not one moment before then. Or I will say to them, let's reconvene in 6 months. Let's see where you're at. But at least at that point, Tim, they have the education and the knowledge of what their business is worth, whether they decide to do something or not. And the other piece of the puzzle is that it gives them an opportunity to say to themselves, well, when I sell it, I want to put this amount of money in my pocket, and I'm not quite there yet, but at least I have an exit strategy and I have a goal and I know where I'm at.
Yep, perfect.
Okay,
well, good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just email Max at wcibroker.com. Max, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having
I think
me.
that was educational.
That's huge.
Now you're really confused.
No, we love this because this is a conversation we have with our clients every day.
Good.
And
I love this too because, like I said, there's so many sellers that have no idea what it's all about to sell their business.
I would say the majority don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
They don't. Yeah.
Well, good enough, guys. Thanks for being on the show, Max.
Thanks
Until
for
next
having
time,
me.
guys, keep changing lives. We'll see you on the next show. Bye.